One of the challenges of actually applying the NOS system on a fretboard can be these three lines, these whole lines. They're quite a stretch. They're 4-fret stretch. And if you're playing low on the guitar, or especially if you're playing bass, it gets very difficult to stretch that way. And so there is a way to avoid playing these whole lines using the NOS system. But in order to do so, you have to add one more stage to the NOS system and add what I call law number 3, a new law. And this is how law number 3 works. So I'm going to erase this. I'm going to erase these lines. Now watch what happens very carefully. So erase that. So this is the first of the whole line. I'm going to erase the third note. The third note. So what I'm going to do is, after I get done playing my 2 lines of the, this is the very beginning, by the way. So 2 lines of the half whole and 2 lines of the whole half, I am going to play the first 2 notes of my whole. Remember, there was the whole there. And I'm going to do a left shift. 1 fret, left shift. You remember law number 1 was a right shift. Law number 2 is a right shift. Law number 3, however, is a left shift. So you're going to go to the left 1 fret and you start all over again from the very beginning. It's pretty simple, right? So here we go. Start all over from the beginning. You remember, this beginning is my number 7 line. So 2 lines of the half whole, followed by 2 lines of the whole half. And here I come again in this sequence of my first whole. Normally I would go there, but law 3, I'm not going to play that third note, and I'm going to apply a left shift, and I start all over again with my number 7 line, just like that. So let me just draw these out so you can see. Like that. Let me squeeze this in, 2 of these. There we go. That's a tight fit. But now law number 3, if this were to go up 10 feet, everything would start shifting to the left. You remember the normal NOS system, everything shifts towards the right. So that is the difference of law 3. Now let me show you. This numerically totally makes sense as well. So I'm going to go and number these again. Remember, this was the first line, and that was a 7. This one's a 3. This one's a 6, 2, and this was a 5. So I'm just going to put 5. That was the first of the whole. Now these numbers not only represent the line, but they actually are representing the first note in that line. So if you just count using the number system, remember, number system goes from 1 through 7 and all over again. This is 7, then this is 1. This is 2, 3, 4. This is 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now watch this. Normally in this line, when it was whole, it'd be 5, 6, and 7 would be over here. But remember, we don't want to play that whole line, so the 7 goes here. And sure enough, look at that. 7 is the very beginning pattern here. And that is why it starts all over at 7. It goes on and on. Remember, 1 through 7, you just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, and on, all the way up. So you see how all the numbers make sense. Now, you might be asking, wait a minute. Now, doesn't this mess up the entire Gnaw system? Because I know in the Gnaw system, there were 3 lines of the whole whole. And you memorized it already. You memorized the number that was associated with those lines to form all your scales and arpeggios and chord tones. But watch this. That was 5. This one was 1. This one was 4. So what happens now is this. This 5 line is here. Remember, you only took the first 2 notes. So using law number 3, whenever you want to play a 5 pattern, you're going to play the line that only has 2 notes. By the way, that's what law number 3 turns these patterns into. There's 4 lines of 3 notes per string, and then there's 1 note of only 2 notes. And once again, 4 lines of 3 notes, and then 1 string of 1 note. That's kind of how the new pattern goes. So now whenever you want to play the 5 or the Mixolydian mode, you're going to play the line that only has the 2 notes, just like that. You might be saying, well, what about the 1? How do I start the 1, the major scale? Well, look at this. Now that you know these numbers not only represent the line, but they represent the first note of each line. So using common sense, you know if you just start on the second note of the line with 7, well, after 7 is a 1. So if you start on the second note, now you have your major scale 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. I guarantee you've seen this pattern before, especially if you play the bass guitar. This is the first way you learn how to play a major scale on the bass. What you didn't know is you were playing the line that's actually the 7 line, but you just haven't been playing the 7 note and starting on the second note. Well, how about the 4 line, you say? What am I going to do when I need a Lydian mode? Number 4, same thing will apply. If you think logically, 4 comes after 3. So if I find the line that starts with a 3 and I start on the second note, that would put me on 4. And sure enough, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. You have your Lydian scale right there. And that's the other thing about this whole system. Remember, this not only applies just vertically, but all horizontally, and actually unlocks and maps out the entire fretboard of your guitar or bass. And so now you don't always have to start on the first note of these lines. You can start on the second notes, or you can start on the third notes. And there is actually like a major scale, there's basically 3 ways to play it. When it starts on the first note here, but you'd have to use these whole. When you play it on the second note, you would have this pattern. Well, you could also start it on the third note here, and then the pattern would look over here. So one way is to play where all the notes are on the left side of 1. Another way is where the rest of the notes are kind of like in the middle of 1. And then over this way, there's a way to play it where all the notes are on the right side of the 1. Okay? All right. So you might be saying now, okay, this totally makes sense, but now I have 3 laws to think of. This is so complex, that you just can't handle it. Well, I have great news for you that want to apply law number 3, is that if you use law number 3, you no longer will use law number 1. So let me get this red and put a giant, no longer need of law number 1 if you apply law number 3. So on bass, let me just clarify this. If you're using law number 3, actually, let me just write it like this. If you're playing bass, all you need is law number 3. No law number 1. However, if you're playing guitar and you're using law number 3, you would need law 3. No law number 1, but you do need law number 2. You remember law number 2 was that the right shift between the G and the B string. That stays there, and that will always be there as long as you're playing guitar. But that is how law number 3 is applied.